Hi, I'm Chris.
I'm Bebbo.
And I'm Millsy.
Each week, we're going to unleash the thrill of sporting discourse as we debate some of the hottest topics across the globe.
With insightful analysis, diverse perspectives, and engaging discussions, we strive to entertain and inform as we tug at the fabric of social morality.
We dive into the ultimate court of conversation and feel the friction of mass debated sports.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 14 of the Masturbated Sports podcast. I've been thrown into the deep end hosting again because Millsy's again shirking his responsibility, and Chris isn't with us tonight because his missus promised to hot tour on him if he took the night off and stayed at home. So, Millsy, any luck at your end? How's Stephen been offering you those sorts of privileges?
Yeah, she's been good, mate. It's outstanding. Like you just said, mate, I threw in it right at the last minute. We had a bit of a schedule change, and you don't disappoint. So yeah, that's fantastic that you can conjure that sort of stuff up on the spot, and that's why we reign in the millions of listeners, right? Because
that's right, millions.
Just come up with on the spot. So, but yeah, mate, no, it was good, and sorry to the listeners. Oh, sorry, not sorry that I was away last week. Probably a blessing for all of you. But it was great to catch up with yourself, Bebbo, up in Townsville in the casino. Few beers and on a school night, always a good thing. And surrounded by one of our least watched sports on the screens of baseball was interesting. But
most watched sport in the world, mate. What are you talking about?
Well, when you play 10 games every day for majority of the year. I feel like those figures are slightly skewed. It's just like F1 has the highest attended fixtures. Well, yeah, because they do it in a paddock which is surrounded by 4 miles of track. So, of course, they're going to have the highest attendance per fixture. But, you're right. And again, expert analysis, just dishing it out like that, mate. So, it was good. And, been well, thanks. Bloody hot up there still. Jesus, you kind of forget about it.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful. It's fucking God's country up here. You don't want to be cold. Who likes being cold? No one. So the T20 has taken a bit of a turn since you were last on this show when England were facing the Axe, Millsy. So I'm sure you've got a bit to give it to us. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off, hey? Give us your best shot. Australia's now eliminated after losing yesterday or this morning to India and Afghanistan, holding on against Bangladesh. So give us your best shot. What's going on?
Well, let's peel back a little bit and we'll start on some mutual ground here and just congratulate New Zealand on getting those early airfares back home as well. Can't forget that.
They wanted to get out of the country for another airline went bust.
Yeah, that's it. They're running out of options. So they had to make a speedy exit. Definitely an end of an era for that New Zealand team, and it was great while it lasted. But I think it was already just one tournament too far for a lot of their players, which was a shame. But fantastic effort over a lot of those players' careers. But yeah, we didn't come here to talk about across the ditch. We came here to dish out some retaliation, and I think it's well placed as well. Like I'm not one to be madly in love with English cricket. I think I love cricket. I love watching it. Test matches are awesome, but only when they're good, right? Same with every sport, I suppose.
Test matches are far from awesome. They have 5 days of boredom, mate. I'd rather watch fucking NASCAR. You're kidding me.
Hell no.
At least there might be some crashes and possible death.
Sandpaper not get you excited, mate?
No, sandpaper doesn't do it for me. Either does. I've not been one for having Indian men step on my balls. So, not big on Test cricket.
But T20 Cup is definitely alive and well over in the USA and West Indies. So, been some mad turnarounds from last time we were recording this. Australia was sitting pretty at top of the table, looking like a a threat for the title, as they always are. But in true, I don't know, they must have caught what Pakistan had and just done exactly what they typically do, and they nearly passed it on to Afghanistan to nearly bottle it. But yeah, Australia are out, hot off the press. That game closed up for Afghanistan about sort of 3:30. We're recording this at 6, so sort of like rejigging my notes a little bit, getting a bit worried that Australia might have found a way through in true Australian fashion. But no, Afghanistan are probably the first minor team, I'd say, non sort of major cricketing country to actually make it through the Super 8s and into a semi-final. So fantastic for cricket. Especially fantastic for cricket that India are still in the competition, because the viewing figures will be superior, of course. But Australia probably went into that Afghanistani game a bit complacent, because ultimately what they had to do is beat Afghanistan, then they're through. But they rested Starc, who arguably is their most important player against Afghanistan, because he was the one that was probably going to get Gurbaz out. And if you don't know cricket too well, or especially the Afghanistani team, which not many people do, but they've got a pretty crack bowling lineup, and their batting lineup consists of one player at the top of the order, Gurbaz. And Australia decided to rest their premier opening bowler in short format cricket in Mitchell Starc. So I don't know what Australia were doing in that. You know, like I said, it's probably better to beat Afghanistan, secure your place in the semis, and then who cares what happens with the Indian match, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And Afghanistan are no mugs. Like, they have consistent IPL players. Their entire bowling lineup are in, frontline IPL teams. So they know their way about a cricket pitch, and it showed. It really showed. Gurbaz got the better of Australia, and then the bowlers just cleaned up and had Australia on the ropes. Could have been a lot worse for Australia as well. So, that's really, really sad ending to David Warner's career. Sorry. I've got another piece on him later on. But,
Wouldn't be the first time you've put your piece on him.
Yeah. Well, no comment. But he's he goes out with his bat held low for sure. I think he actually was caught behind for a duck or 1 or 2 runs in his final innings, which was relatively fitting for some comments he's made earlier this week. So,
well, there was a bit of controversy about how Australia picked their T20 team before this tournament that we touched on in a previous episode. Mm-hmm. They pretty much ignored IPL form of a lot of younger guys like Fraser McGurk and plays like that. And kept players like Warner in, brought Stoinis in, and I think he fired the first game, but I don't know how he's really fared since there, Stoinis. So, it could just be the chickens coming home to roost with some bad decisions and sitting Starc down for this game, like you said. Why would you rest a player in a game where Bangladesh and Afghanistan, like you said, were 2 wins, or that puts them through? It doesn't matter if they lose to India, gives them worse seeding in the semis. It doesn't really fucking matter. They've at least qualified for there. Instead, they're walking away with egg on their face. So, it's kind of a bit of an embarrassment. But at the same time, we shouldn't take too much away from Afghanistan. They were pretty exceptional in those group stages with the games they played. They were toweling everyone up. And again, we talked about that in the previous episode about how good their bowlers were. So you just got to take your hat off to them. Well done. They're good at things other than just rooting gates.
Absolutely. And special mention goes to Mohammad Nabi of the Afghanistani team, who has now beaten 45 international cricket teams, which supersedes everyone's victors probably by about 10. So that just goes to show the growth of Afghanistani cricket over the years, and now they're knocking out tier 1 teams, and there's no horizon in sight for this team. They've got a fair few youngsters, and it's only going to get stronger and stronger. However, there was probably something more in it for the Afghanistanis in their match with Australia, and let's just ponder on that one. I'm going to take our listeners back to potentially one of the first episodes that we did, and we discussed Australia boycotting their tour to Afghanistan. And, it's only fitting, I think, isn't it, Bebbo, that they were the ones to knock them out after they boycotted that tour, eh?
Yeah, I actually think so. Yeah, it's, I'm Australian, but I'm not that passionate about cricket, so I really couldn't give a fuck about the result, to be fair. But, I do see the funny side in it being Afghanistan to knock them out, considering they cancelled their bilateral series on the moral high ground. That they spent too long riding their moral high horse around town instead of practicing being better at cricket. And you look at what happened in Afghanistan there, the amount of improvement they've made that you've talked about by having their women locked up without a say, and all that extra time to train. So who really got it right here? Was it the Afghanis or was it the Australians? But in all seriousness, we said it was ridiculous at the time. Sports and politics, like, they've started crossing lines way too often, and that really shouldn't happen. Just because the Taliban run the country a certain way, it shouldn't be affecting the citizens or the cricket players of Afghanistan. So, yeah, look, I find it, I wouldn't say justice, not really justice, but I find it fitting that that's the way it's ended up, because Australia, who were, like we said, holding that moral high ground and refused to play them early in the year, definitely didn't stand on their moral high horse, sit on their moral high horse when it came to knockout finals cricket. So,
yeah, I concur. Like you said, in that all the way back there, and that must have been probably 4 months ago now when we did that first recording. Like you said, when it comes to it, are they going to boycott a knockout match against Afghanistan? Well, proof's in the pudding. They didn't, and they paid the price. I mean, the other thing as well, like I said, I think Australia were a bit complacent going into this match, and if they had done that tour to Afghanistan, maybe they would have opened up their eyes to the talent that's actually in that team.
Yeah, agreed.
So it really probably didn't help them at all in the end, and like we said on that podcast, not going and touring Afghanistan isn't going to change anything. If anything, not touring and then Afghanistan going through probably, I'm not sort of saying it validates what the Taliban are doing. Absolutely not. But I just think it's, it takes away a lot of the Western media for, how terrible conditions are over there and stuff. It takes the shine and the edge off of that potentially.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind, eh?
Yeah, that's it. So,
on some of these smaller nations in this World Cup, though, it's actually been pretty good to see how close a lot of the competition is. I mean, take out Papua New Guinea and who was that African team that was dog shit? But you take those two out, and a lot of close games there. And even look at the result. I mean, Bangladesh with a quicker run rate could have jumped Afghanistan today to sneak into that next stage of the competition. You've got West Indies, close losses to both South Africa and England, to miss out. Obviously, USA got smoked when it came to the Super 8 series, but just to even qualify, in their first World Cup. It's good to see. It's a very strong competition, very, I guess, well divided across the thing. But you'd have to say India's the favourites to take it home, would you, or what?
Yeah, although they are perennial chokers in competitions. You only got to think back to World Test Championship and then the one-day final against Australia. The ICC make it as easy as possible for India to make it through in these competitions, because if India don't make it through, their viewing figures go down by probably a flat billion overnight. So
1.4 billion, yeah.
So it's in their interest to keep them in the competition as long as possible. And there's a lot of conspiracy around is it rigged or not? I'd say I think it's not rigged as such. I mean, everything's slightly rigged, I reckon, but it's definitely the talent in that team. And I think going into the comp, there were favourites. I would have had Australia up there as well, with probably England and South Africa close third and fourth, respectively. I would say India has consolidated that top position. Although I would say that England in the next round will not be a comfortable game. I think if whoever wins that one, I think will probably be the favourite to win. And that's just because obviously England are very hot and cold. They lost, or they didn't lose to Scotland. They got washed out, and anything could have happened. You saw how close Scotland pushed them in that match, but then they went away and thumped the lesser teams in their table, and then they came out and demolished the West Indies in the first match in the Super 8s, and lost just to South Africa. But South Africa have only scraped through. They haven't had any big washout wins. They've only just won. So that match against Afghanistan could be crucial. And if Afghanistan get into the final, it could be sink or swim for them. I suspect it will probably be one game too far against South Africa. You sort of saw the state of the players after beating Bangladesh, not like a super team there, but they've just beaten Australia quite handily, so they've obviously got something in the arsenal. But like I said, you get Gurbaz out in Afghanistan, and the team looks a bit thin. But yeah, ultimately, I think India are still probably favourites. I'd say 50% favourites, but I think England are probably 25% favourites, with South Africa 15, and then Afghanistan 10. And I'm giving them that high of a thing as 10 because if they can beat South Africa in the semi, I think they will actually be quite dangerous in the final. They will have nothing to lose, and they've got some players that have done it in the big comps in the IPL before. Obviously serve India, but serve England as well. But I just think they're a bit of an unknown quantity, and they could have all the neutrals on their side. So it'll be really interesting to see, actually, and I'm quite excited to see how the rest of the comp sort of unfolds. Just from an outsider's perspective, and we're going to get more into international sport in a minute. Have you engaged with it at all, Bebbo?
With the World Cup?
Yeah.
Not actually really watching anything other than highlights and following the results, just to see who's going to beat who, I guess, to progress. But no, I haven't been tuning in to watch games because cricket's, it's not my cup of tea.
There's also the other roadblock on this, and it's on Amazon Prime Video. And I know a lot of cricket people who will watch cricket regularly. And I honestly have not watched anything that I needed to pay for on this cricket. So I've watched illegal highlights and stuff they're on YouTube, right? So they can't be that illegal, right? I haven't done anything illegal, gone to Pirate Bay and all that stuff. I don't know what that is. But
I don't know what 1, 2, 3 movies is or anything.
Yeah, someone told me
or Put
a story
Locker
about
or
that
any
one.
of those things.
Exactly. But it just makes access to view it really tricky. And a lot of these not even floating fans, I'd say, they're 70% cricket, 30% other sports. They're just not watching it. And I think it's a real shame that, remember when KO used to have the Ashes and stuff? They didn't have that last time. And it's just makes it so difficult to view it. And it's just annoying. Like, you just want to watch this sport. Well, it's on a good time for Australia as well. And it was on at 3:30 or whatever it was today. And
the beauty with KO when it first came out is it had nearly every sport on it, or all sports.
Every sport, yeah.
So that was your sports streaming platform, But now that you've got Union on Stan, you've got cricket on Prime, it seems fucking weird. Like, why are you going to tune in to watch NHL on Netflix? It's not on Netflix, but that's my point. Netflix is a movie streaming service. Leave the sport out of it. You know what I mean? Leave that to a sports streaming service. That was the whole magical thing about all these different services. You got to pay for the ones you wanted to, because pay TV, Foxtel, Odstar, whatever the fuck it was called, kept changing names. Mm-hmm. You'd have to get packages, and it would give you half of this and half of that, and it'd give you Antiques Roadshow. I don't fucking want Antiques Roadshow, all right? Fucking, I don't want to see Bethel bring in a fucking rusty old spoon to see if it's worth anything. I couldn't give a fuck, Bethel. Okay, but so when they split into different things, it was brilliant because you got to basically choose which one you wanted to pay for and move on. But now it's slowly and surely getting taken back over in that same shit mold. We've got to have 25 different streaming services to have everything available to you. Now, I've got Prime, so I could watch it. I just choose not to because life's too short to watch cricket.
I I don't know about that, but I think there's a big issue with the onslaught to families who want to watch this sport. We've got a cost of living crisis pretty much across the Western world at the moment, and when you're forking out like I currently do, KO, Stan, and however many streaming services there are that take money from a bank account every month, it's just becomes like $100 a month, and it's like, fuck, serious? Like, this is getting a bit crazy now. So I'm going to have to start cancelling some, I think, because it's just getting beyond manageable almost, and just trying to keep a track of what's being played on what platform. Like the England rugby at the weekend, like that was on a streaming service that only does rugby in the UK called Rugby Pass. There was no terrestrial broadcaster that broadcasted it. So these sports are ultimately going to have issues trying to find broadcasters, and that will have a knock-on effect to the broadcasting money that they can chase, because all the rights, the viewing figures will go down if it's inaccessible for the audience, and obviously that equals money, advertising money. So I think there's an issue. If the NRL moves from KO, I'll probably just get rid of KO. I think.
Yeah, 100%.
So they've got for the Australian market. Obviously, they've got AFL and NRL and a couple of other sports like basketball, but
ice
they've obviously
hockey, American football, UFC. It's got a few, but yeah, there's a lot of pointless shit. Like European handball and lacrosse.
Who's watching that? I'd love to know the viewing figures on KO. I'd love to get them down. Like, is there more than 10,000 people watching that?
Surely not. Not Australia. Fucking hell, surely.
How much are they paying for it? You'd be surprised. Like we went through those viewing figures for sports globally. I just love to know the numbers, like pay per view, or how many people pay for KO and how many people watch that, and then you could extrapolate out for like a dollar price sort of minute average.
Down, you reckon? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because there is other sports, right? You get like the V8s. If you watch the V8s, you get Formula One for the motor racing enthusiasts. You get Ultimate Frisbee.
For the
you get the dog shows every now and then. You get the World Surfing League.
Well, there's going to be hobby horse,
Super Netball.
Surely,
there's a few leagues that people are following, right? Across it, so it does make sense. And it doesn't matter if people don't watch those sports, but the fact that all of them are on it makes it good. All of them except for Union. All of them except for cricket in this instance. But why won't Channel 9 or Channel 7 or Channel 10 pony up for some game rights during these times? Yeah, they on-sell it. Prime will on-sell it as the main broadcaster to them, instead of having like the 75th edition of The Block, or, like The Bachelorette for the 95th time. Oh, look, Stacey's back for her 16th attempt at finding love. People don't love you, Stacey, because you're a fake-ass cunt. All right? So you're never going to find love. Move on. Get some real sport on television.
I mean, they must have done their analysis and, they've come up with saying that it's not worth it. They still don't, even in K, they don't even have the AFL Grand Final on there, do they? It was on the replay like 2 days after. That was on terrestrial TV. Yeah,
that'll be on Channel 7 or whoever's got the AFL rights for pay TV. Same with the NRL Grand Final. It's only on Channel 9. State of Origin's only on Channel 9. It'll get played on KO the moment that game. No, the moment that game finishes. Yeah, so say State of Origin finishes at 10:30 at night, it'll be on KO at 10:30. As long as it's been played live first, they'll allow KO to play it afterwards, or Fox, because
it just seems a bit weird to me that they would go after the big money items and then just ignore the rest of the season.
The actual product,
yeah. But I'm sure there's people smarter than us that have done said analysis and produce the business model that says, we only get these 3 games or whatever, and we'll get more bang for our buck on that. But I just feel like
we've gotten so far off fucking topic, it's not funny. So back to the World Cup here, right? And before we move on to the next topic, because this is a good segue. Oh, and before I even move on to this, we should mention Australia did rest Mitchell Starc, but Pat tree-hugging Cummins got hat-tricks in back-to-back games, which is a pretty fantastic result. I'm assuming one hat-trick's good. Two in two games is absolutely fucking outstanding. So solar power works, people.
It is outstanding, but when you're playing the USA and Bangladesh, it does take the shine off it a little bit.
It didn't play the USA.
It did, didn't it?
No, it was Bangladesh and Afghanistan.
Oh, sorry. Much better. Well, I mean, they lost to Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. So anyhow, so in the Afghanistan-Bangladesh nail-biter this afternoon, the one that decided Australia's fate ultimately, and Bangladesh's at the same time, it was a bit rain-affected. Bangladesh kept the Afghans down to, I think, 114, 115, something.
The equation was, like you said at the top, there was a risk of Bangladesh actually jumping Afghanistan.
Jumping everyone.
They had to chase it down in 12.1 overs. They went off like a...
And they came out of the blocks flying. They had a good run rate early on, about 9 or 10 and over. They only needed 5.6. Slowed down. They started losing a few wickets. That bowling attack from Afghan came on. And they still looked like they were going to get run down, the Afghanis. And there was a few overs remaining. The clouds started coming over. And Jonathan Trott, the great English cricketer, is he actually a South African too? Yeah, there you go. South African English cricketer. Another
he
one.
Terrorised Australia in the Down Under Ashes series. Yeah,
he's coaching Afghanistan, and he signalled to the players to slow down the bowling rate a little bit, just to try and allow the clouds to come over, because Bangladesh had gone past the overs where they could have jumped them with the net run rate, but they could have still beat them and knocked them out, allowing Australia to go through. So the signal came out, and Gulbadine Naib was standing in first slip, suddenly got a very peculiar hamstring tear without even moving, just standing on the spot, grabbed his hamstring, hit the deck, and I must say, obviously slowed the game down. The rain came over. Now, the rain was coming over anyway, so it might not have been an issue, but clear act of gamesmanship here. Now, I've got a question for you, Millsy. If they were threatening to ban Mitch Marsh as Australian captain, if Australia threw that game against Scotland to remove England in the group stage, they were going to stand there for 3 games. Surely Gulbadine Naib has to stand down for the rest of the World Cup, because he's got a 3-game suspension for clearly affecting another team's result by cheating.
Well, let's just make sure we send our best wishes to Gulbadine, and we hope he gets a speedy recovery.
The Oscar.
Yeah, that's it. I think the pure irony of the situation is not lost on me. The potential cheaters get cheated out of the comp, and with the whole sandpaper thing, I think what goes around comes around. But in terms of
get fucked, Johnny Bairstow.
Well, to be honest, it isn't. I mean, is it a tricky one? It's tricky in the sense that it's like, how do you prove that you didn't just have a spontaneous cramp?
Oh, fuck no. No chance. No chance.
But, again, it's like if Australia did throw the game against England, I don't know, it just probably adds more press than what it requires. But the fact that Afghanistan have made it through, no one's talking about that. Maybe it will come out in the wash later on, but everyone's celebrating the fact that Afghanistan have made it through. Yeah, I think it's a little bit unfair for Australia. I'd say that because if that was Australia doing the same thing, no doubt that would be plastered across the headlines. So I think where Afghanistan are world cricket, that's going to get washed over, and the ICC will want it to get washed over because they won't want something like that tainting a potential minnow getting through. But yeah, in terms of repercussions, zip is going to happen. I'd be surprised if he even gets banned because, like I said, how do you even prove it? And we were saying before, like, how would you prove that Australia match fixed? It's difficult, right? It's a T20. And even though Australia did their best and dropped 3 catches during the fielding in that match, they still ended up winning. So, but yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts? And do you have any emotions about it being cricket?
No, not really. It's cricket. But it does lead into the next topic because it's an ever-growing trend. And obviously in the AFL, we saw it over the weekend. We've seen so many sports, but the one the AFL was particularly bad. And they've come down as a league pretty hard on some of their tackles over the last month or so, handing out suspensions for physical takedowns, which seem legal to me. They just seem physical, which shouldn't be a penalty in a contact sport. But Melbourne Demons player Stephen May has lent on that theory way too hard, and he earned his team a penalty over the weekend by grabbing his head after being swung to the ground in a tackle that made zero contact with his head, which is, like we say, a worrying trend in sports these days. Now, they got a free kick. May copped a fine for it, but it's not enough as far as I'm concerned. A game can be won and lost on moments like this. Referees are already under so much pressure to get calls right. They can't have eyes everywhere. And this is just making that job harder, them having more decisions incorrect, and it's turning fans off. So what does a fine do to an opposition team that loses a game, like for an opposition team, I should say, that loses a game out of one of these systems? Do you think a fine is sufficient?
Well, it's a tricky situation, isn't it? It's not just in AFL, as we'll no doubt discuss further on this topic. But you don't want to prevent players from hiding head injuries, right? So you don't want to take away any, or you can't be seen by taking any sort of punishment away, right? Because if you do that, the lawyers will jump on, like they have in other sports, and say you did not do the due diligence enough as a sport to keep the players safe. And in 20 years' time, there'll be a lawsuit coming against them for CTE and all that stuff, like we're seeing in NFL and rugby union. So it's a balance. Is a fine the right thing? I don't know. Maybe. Is it? If it's clear and obvious, if it's definitely foul contact, yeah, I'd send him off. That's you can't do that in modern day sport, unfortunately, as much as you like it. But good luck.
But it's not fining the guy that's made the tackle.
No,
they fine the guy that's laid down like a bitch and grabbed his head when it's not a penalty. A penalty should not have been blown at all in this section. I mean, you look at the NRL, right? You got a guy that gets tapped across the face because he's a foot off the ground. The guy that does it cops a penalty. Sometimes he gets 10 in the bin. Sometimes he gets a fine on top of that. That's 3 punishments he copped for what was essentially an accident. What this ass clown in the fucking AFL's done on the weekend is flat out cheating. Mm-hmm. And he's not alone. And it doesn't just happen in the AFL, obviously. Like, it's becoming more and more common in the NRL. We see it with Kyle Flanagan fucking grabbing his head the other day. We see it Kalma Tuolangi throwing his fucking head back like a little bitch when he got contact across the chest. It's a massive problem in that. It's a massive problem in what I've read. Irish sports like Gaelic football and hurling are having a big epidemic of it too. In the land of leprechauns and drunks over there, they're having issues with players diving. Mm-hmm. So everyone's catching up to soccer and basketball in this shit side of team sports or professional sports. So I just don't think a mere fine is enough. Like, yes, it is hard to sit there and say, oh, were you really hurt? Well, I think in this AFL circumstance, you can 100% say, no, you weren't. There was no contact with your head. How was your head automatically sore? When you saw Kalma Tuolangi do it 2 weeks ago against the Roosters, well, one, the contact and the slow replays across the fucking ball on his chest, and he hits, runs one step, and then just throws his fucking head back. Like he's Willow Smith in I Whip My Hair Back and Forth. Fucking hell. And we all know how those Smiths have looked at by the world. Fucking freaks. But anyhow, I digress. You can prove that there was no contact and that he was foxing. You can prove that a lot of these players are foxing. Will Kennedy, at the start of the year, was fucking 20 metres from where the ball was getting put down and just found a Manly player to run into to try and get a obstruction penalty. That right there should be taken worse too. You know, it's
it goes
a bad
both ways,
look on
right?
the sport. So like, how is a fine going to be enough of a deterrent to stop this filthy habit just infiltrating further into all world sports?
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. So the biggest thing I've got with this, and every time you see a player grab his head, I've got a pretty simple solution. Right? If you grab your head, get up from contact, go for a HIA, 20 minutes off the pitch, it'll stop them doing it. And how many times? How many times do they go down holding their head and they stay on the pitch, but the other player gets sent off? If you're going down holding your head, you've obviously got an issue with your head, right? So you need to have that HIA done. It's the same thing if you hold your hamstring. The doctor comes on, looks at your hamstring, and 4 or 5 times out of 10 they do an assessment. They don't do an assessment on your head, like a HIA, which is the proper protocol. It's that big of an issue, and there's that much head contact for you to go and hold your head, especially in AFL or an NRL. There's an issue, right? Normally blood coming out of it, streaming out your head, whatever. And if you just come up holding your head, to me, that's you should be, like I said, you should be, going off for a HIA, coming off the pitch for a bit, and it would stop that behaviour. Because if you kept doing it, and if you kept doing it, right, it would stop players doing it on a serial basis because they'd run out of subs.
Okay, it would stop it to an extent, Millsy, because I used to think the same. Okay, just send them for a HIA, they'll stop doing it. What if it's in the last 2 minutes of a tied game and they get a penalty that wins that game? Doesn't matter that they got sent for a HIA for fucking 3 minutes. Doesn't matter one bit at all. They've actually got a benefit from it. Why would you not do it when you're a forward, a front rower, 20 minutes into the game when you're at the end of your first stint so you get a free interchange?
Well, the problem is,
there's too many things that they will just abuse with that system. They need to start attacking the player. That's the problem.
Yeah, and if it's clear and obvious, doesn't make contact with the head, I agree there should be punishment. Flat out, it should be a punishment. A fine isn't good enough. It should be games banned. That would stop players. I don't know how many games, but if you have 3 or 4 games out, the equivalent of what it would be if you did hit the head on someone and get a red card. I think that's like fair enough, right? Because you're cheating. You're flat out cheating. Like there's no other word for it. However, you don't want to stop players from claiming or going and getting a head injury assessment or being too cautious on that front, because we know all the lawsuits going around the world. So you don't want to stop that, but you also want to stop the cheating. So the judicial system has to make a stand for this sort of stuff and look at these cases critically and say, okay, well, who instigated the head contact? Because what will happen is a player going into contact will look for head to shoulder contact, and then there was contact, so therefore it's not an issue. But if it looks unnatural, I don't really like it. But in soccer, you get a handball given against you if your hands in a sort of unnatural position, so you're just not to the side of your body and stuff, and it's a grey area, and you can't make it black and white. You're always going to get bad calls, and I agree. The officials get charged with too much. We saw it. We see it every week. Officials getting dragged through the water in the press, in the coaches' interviews after, and all this stuff. At the end of the day, you got 80 minutes to beat the other team. If you're relying on a few decisions, then you need to coach your team better, right?
Big call. Look, I get that premise to a bit, but fuck me, like one call at the end of a tight game can ruin a game. Can literally turn a game. You do not want to see it happen, whether your team wins or loses from it. It's shit. And in defence of sports like soccer and basketball, the two biggest problem sports for diving, flopping, milking, whatever you'd fucking call it, but they introduced rules years ago to try and prevent it moving forward. Neither of the introductions of their rules have been sufficient or even remotely effective to date, but that's because they don't enforce it. There is that many dives in soccer where there is no contact. If they started making proper examples of those people, there'd be less diving. NHL is the best sport on earth for dealing with diving, because if you take a dive, the referee will just send you to the bin for 2 minutes, which is their minor penalty, 2 or 5, which is the same amount of time you get for cross-checking, which for people that don't watch ice hockey is taking your stick with both hands and just whacking some motherfucker with it. So you get the same penalty for that as you do for taking a dive. So they don't like diving one bit. This is a sport that still allows you to punch on the ice, and sit there and give you about 3 minutes to have you go before they step in. So it's brilliant. It's done so well that no one dives anymore. I can't remember the last diving penalty I've seen in the NHL. I don't reckon I've seen one for 5 or 6 years. And they also have a sliding scale system when it comes to fines. So you don't just get the penalty. You commit this treachery a few times and you get a fine. If you are the coach of a team where players do it, they accumulate too. When it gets to a certain point, the coach also starts getting fined. And that keeps going up, and that keeps going up, that keeps going up. And look, I still don't think this is good enough, because from a business perspective, professional sports are part of the entertainment industry. Let's not kid ourselves. And as such, a bulk of their money is coming from being entertaining and maintaining an entertainment value. So penalties that shouldn't have been penalties, or calls that shouldn't have been calls, and the softening of all this shit, like the aforementioned things I said in the NRL, like soccer has over the years, like we've just seen in the AFL over the weekend, they are affecting the overall product and the overall entertainment value of that sport, which affects the profit value or the total market value of that company. Now, people walking around in all forms of life will get fired every day from their normal jobs for affecting their employer's bottom line. So why the fuck can't we hold these people accountable for it? I honestly believe they need to be harder on it. Yes, you're right, Millsy. It is so hard to sit there and say that wasn't hard enough contact for you to have reacted that way. There wasn't. You weren't hurt. There's no way you were fucking hurt. There's no way you pulled a hamstring standing at fucking first slip. But the ones that are that obvious should be punished so severely that people won't even attempt to fuck around with it. I'm suggesting 3 weeks the first one, 9 on the second incident, and bye-bye, you're banned from the fucking league on the third. Because they have got to be definitive, obviously, but that will make people go, okay, I'm not going to be a bitch about this. It didn't hurt that much. Or he didn't even fucking touch my head. Not even remotely close to touching my head. Maybe I should just get up and play the fucking ball because I'm a man. So it's got to be something that fucking harsh to turn people around. Because an $1,800 fine, are you fucking shitting me? Can't probably get paid $600,000 a year. You think he gives a fuck about an $1,800 fine?
Day's work.
Oh.
Yeah. No, that's... in my head, I was thinking, as you were saying that sounded a bit harsh, but then you actually think about it. If you're a clean player, you've got nothing to worry about, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I kind of do like that. I'd almost say probably not like if you're out the league. I'd almost make it more embarrassing. I'd say a season stand down. So you have to come back and play and then get booed on the pitch.
And they just keep tripling it. They just keep tripling. Start at 3 and just keep tripling the penalty. Each time you do it's triple. Triple. Yeah. But do you think that the overreactions by referees, like as far as crackdowns in certain sports, and the AFL obviously having their own crackdown at the moment with these swing tackles, which they deem dangerous contact, the NRL's had, well, they have a new fucking crackdown every 3 weeks, seemingly.
Hmm.
But do you think the overreaction by referees on these crackdowns, that they deem even mildly dangerous, if I can fucking speak properly, do you reckon that's a catalyst for the influx or the abundance of players that suddenly become Hollywood's elite on the sporting field? Because I feel like when we've seen it in the past, especially in the NRL, there's one bad incident, there was one bad crusher tackle, and then all of a sudden everything's a crusher tackle. And now you get fuckwits like Jordan Rapiner, like reverse into a tackle and then just grab the back of his head for a penalty to get out of his own end.
Yeah.
So do you feel like the referees, and I'm not putting on the referees because they get given mandates, but do you feel like the officiating of sports is the main reason that we've come to this right now?
No, officiating I see as 2 different ways, right? Because you got the on-field officiate and then you got the off-field officiate. And the off-field stuff considers the rule books and the rulings and the framework of the sport. So I don't know what the definition of a crusher tackle is, but I imagine it's got something along the lines of force to the back of the head in a tackle, right? Probably words to that effect.
No, well, the crusher tackle, just let me talk you through it. And whoever
I know what it is, but I'm just saying in the rule book, it probably says words to that effect, right? So how do you prove that didn't happen, right? If you get hit in the back of the head, whether it's manufactured or engineered by the player running into the contact, if you don't have that in the rule book, so say if it's instigated by the defending player or instigated by the attacking player, if it's instigated by the attacking player, it's sort of cheating, dissent, or whatever. If it's originated by the defending player, then that is part of the framework. I bet in the rule books, and I want to see this more often, and they need to start doing it, who instigated it. Because otherwise what you'll get is high shots. Okay, well, the player just runs in with the head. Okay, well, that's a shoulder-to-head contact. Well, who started the contact? Well, it wasn't the defender. He was the correct height. Like, I'm not saying this wasn't a red card, but we saw a great example in Origin and all the debate around it last time, where Reece Walsh's head dipped, right? Fair enough. It did dip, but not 2 foot, as some people want to say, like Paul Gallen. But at the end of the day, that was an example where the player, Joseph Swahili, was never in control of his body. He left the ground prior to hitting Reece Walsh, so he had no control over what height he was going to hit. It was excessive force to an area that was likely to be his head. So in my eyes, that's no mitigation. That's just dangerous play. So red card. However, what happens if Swahili had, left the ground and, aimed for the hips, and then Reece Walsh has seen him leave the ground, and it's probably never going to happen because it all happens too quick. He's just gone, fuck, he's left the ground. I'm going to stick my head down with my hips. He gets hit in the head by Swahili, but his head's down by his hips. That contact was instigated by the attacking player, not the defending player. So in my eyes, that should be a situation where Reece Walsh, in this case, it never happened. It's just hypotheticals. He should be getting the same punishment that Joseph Swahili would have got for instigating that. And then you add on your triple threat scale as well on top of that. So the officials have got it tough, right? They get given a certain set of rules. I don't want to compare them to lawyers because they don't really have it tough. But officials on the pitch, they're hated by both teams, even though it looks like they're not. I would hate to be an official, and I commend them for doing their job. However, they're not helped with the frameworks that the rule books allow them to do it, or to do their job, essentially, because there is no commentary about who instigates this sort of thing. Yeah. And that has to be written in there because that will, remove those Rapiner situations where he's running in backwards and then holding his head because there's head contact. He's not wrong. There is head contact, but he's starting it. And like I said, there's nothing in the rule book to say that he can't start it. It's it is cheating, but by the letter of their law book, it's not. It's a penalty to Canberra. So it's it just needs some tweaking in the rule book, I would suggest. And then I would love to see a penalty scale like you just highlighted there with a 3. I don't want to see a player ever get banned because I want them to get the opportunity to get booed on the pitch, because that will stop other players from doing it. They won't be able to go and hide away in retirement. They will have to come back on, see out their contract or whatever, and they will get booed to the cowsheds and home. And I'd love to see that, because that will stop it. They'll be public enemy number one. And like you said at the top, these are entertainers. As soon as that entertainment value goes, they're nothing, and it will really fuck them up mentally.
Dance for us, you monkeys.
Exactly.
No, Ezra, not you.
You got a 10-game ban there, mate. 10 episode ban.
8.
Was it 8? Was it?
Yeah, it was 8.
Yeah.
I was saying it wasn't him. I was just clarifying. All right.
True. He's the listener, I heard.
Yes. Right. Well, we'll move on to our massive sports cock of the week, eh?
Let's do it. Want to do Chris's proxy one first?
No, we're gonna go through last week's results first.
Yeah, apologies.
I'm starting to get better at remembering this. I'm remembering it as I'm doing it, but not 6 minutes after I've started talking about the new one. All right. Last week we had Connor Clark. He got 0% for streaking with his clothes on, which is one of the gayest things you can do these days at a sporting event, and getting banned for life from all AFLW matches. We had Freddie Mills for failing to submit a proxy Sports Cock of the Week vote, getting 25% of the votes. And,
that was actually me for myself, I think, as well.
And the International Olympic Committee's anti-sex beds for the Paris Olympics coming in at first place with 75% of the votes. And what a stupid fucking idea by the IOC.
We'll see how long that lasts.
All right, well, this week we'll start with a proxy. Chris has put one in, like a true professional. You should learn something. And he's gone with English spinner Shoaib Bashir.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you pronounce it? I feel like I did that really.
Yeah.
I feel like I did that really well.
You're really notching up the Asian names this week.
Fucking hell. Anyhow, he equated equaled the unwanted record for the most expensive over in English first-class cricket when he was spanked for 38 runs on a single over this week. The batsman hit 5 sixes consecutively off the first 6 balls.
And
5 balls.
English comrade as well. Dan Lawrence.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, player for England, both of them. I don't know if they played the same England team, but quite funny.
He then bowled a wide, which got hit for 4, which brought the tally up to 35. He then bowled a no ball, which got hit for a single. And do they give 2 runs for no balls in English first-class cricket, I found out today, which brought the total up to 38. And he got a dot ball to somewhat redeem himself and not get the record on ball 6. So well done to Shoaib Bashir, who was on loan to this team, and they must be regretting taking that fuckwit off someone else's hands. All right.
He's a bit of a prodigy spinner for England as well. He did a good job for us in the subcontinent in India, just gone. So obviously English cricketing conditions are not playing well for him, but congratulations on the record, mate.
Well, equaling it anyway. But yeah, you're up. Who you got?
Cool. So I already touched and wet the whistle a bit, but I'm going for David Warner. And it's unrelated to the exit today. After the fellas recorded the podcast last week, I submitted my proxy too late, unfortunately, so I'm going to bring him to this week for his comments that he made in an interview about the Sandpapergate scandal. And in his quote, it says he felt that he had taken an unfair brunt of the punishment and the flack that came with the whole incident. Maybe he should go and check his facts and memory banks, because he was the instigator and orchestrator of the entire incident. So no wonder he had copped the flack of it. So whatever sympathy votes he was trying to receive from that, motion passed in my opinion. Complete, utter fuckwit. So, and it's unrelated, like I said, to the T20 exit and the end of his career. Maybe, I don't know, it's the full career, definitely for Australia. But I'm just going to add that as a cherry on the top as well, getting knocked out Afghanistan in this final match after boycotting that series with Tree Leather Cummins.
All right. Well, I'm going to switch up sports since you've both gone the cricket theme this week. And there's a well-known former rugby league player and NRL analyst that cried more than a kid in Al Stewart's rape dungeon when Joseph Suaalii was sent off in Game 1 due to forceful direct contact with Reece Walsh's head, claiming it to be a ridiculous decision at the time, only to now use the same forceful direct contact to the head terminology when describing Junior Pauga's near decapitation of Connor Tracy this past weekend, and complaining that a 4-week suspension isn't long enough for the act, claiming that it was sickening images that he can't see after watching Reece Walsh lie motionless on the floor of Accor Stadium, Olympic Stadium, fucks me, whatever stadium they're playing at Sydney just 3 weeks ago. So if Pauga was wearing a sky blue jersey, I'm sure the perception would be different. And because of his obvious hypocrisy and bias and his bad, sore-losing attitude, my nomination for the massive sports cock of this week is the 8th immortal and renowned pinger fiend, Andrew Joey Johns.
Well said.
You can vote for who you think should take home the honours on Spotify or any podcast, I believe. But yeah, definitely on Spotify.
It's an interesting spread this week. I don't think there's any sort of direct outlier there. They're all different reasons. One for being bad at the sport, one for being bad at talking about the sport, one for being bad at playing and talking about the sport. So we'll see where the
who is bad for playing and talking about the sport.
Well, that's David Warner because he lost against Afghanistan and he was bad about talking about it.
Don't say he had a good career. You leave him alone.
Yeah, he did, but he at the expense of Jake Fraser McGray at this World Cup, which maybe I don't want to go back on it, but no. Enough said there, I reckon. Yeah, I don't reckon I'm going to win though because I know a lot of Australians love David Warner, so probably just me and my dad voting for him. Come on, Zia, wrap the numbers up. So yeah, right. Actually, move on to something a bit closer to probably my heart, not yours, mate, and talk about some rugby union.
I thought we were bringing Stephen into it.
Nah, she is all good, mate. I just heard a heap of plates clatter in the background, so I'm going to walk out to a heap of cracked china, I reckon. We're moving house anyway, so we'll just buy new stuff.
Did she find out that she wasn't allowed to compete with the women in the Paris Olympics?
Quite possibly.
It's Stephen Leah Thomas.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to do an episode on this. There's not enough time in the day at the moment. I'm sure there'll be some stories coming out of the Olympics that we can get into some drug-related stuff and no doubt spin this chat off of there. But yeah, sticking to rugby union for now, though, where definitely my expertise have lied previously, and a lot has happened fundamentally. I'm going to start with Super Rugby Roundup. Congratulations, the Auckland Blues, for beating the Chiefs in... it was the final. This weekend just gone, wasn't it?
It was the final, yep.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm reading here. It says it's the playoff, whatever. I don't know why they call it that, the actual match. It's the grand final, right? Bit of a procession match in the end, 41-10. I think Chiefs played their final the week before against the Hurricanes, so probably ran out of steam. So kudos to the Chiefs for getting there, and well done to the Blues for winning.
Well, it was a big surprise the Chiefs made it that far, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, they scraped into the playoffs, to be fair. So I know they finished fourth, but not convincingly. And honestly, I thought it was going to be Wellington-Auckland final, but I did tip the Blues to win in a previous episode over Wellington. That didn't happen, but they got the chocolates.
But yeah, so I think the Chiefs just ran out of steam. It's like you see it quite a lot in rugby, actually. However, one team that did not run out of steam are the Glasgow Warriors in the United Rugby Championship, which is competition played between, let me get this right, Welsh, Scottish, Irish, and South African and Italian teams. I thought I'd forgotten someone. And they did it the hard way. Played 3 away matches in a row, culminating against South African team. Oh, it escapes me. Who the fuck were they? The Bulls. That's it. And yeah, managed to hold on for the win to be massive underdogs to take that home, that comp, which actually means it's quite interesting, that one. 4 different nationalities of winner in the past 4 seasons. So quite an exciting competition, and maybe it'll be the saviour for sort of Northern Hemisphere rugby. Well, not necessarily World Rugby, because top 14 in France is definitely taking the chocolates in terms of revenue and not profit, but definitely in terms of audience. And they've just signed a huge multi-billion-dollar TV deal, so that will definitely help. But definitely in terms of South African rugby all does pretty well, but definitely the Celtic nations might be a bit of a redeemer there, and probably attracting some eyes from the English game as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with English teams in that one in the future. But we also had some international matches, and this is kind of where we'll pivot to discuss international sport. And a shame they don't really have something similar in Australia, in mainstream sport, that is. England played Japan, and I think many Australians would actually have been cheering for England in this one after Eddie Jones, the ex-coach of England and then the Wallabies, going into the calamitous series that they had at the World Cup. England came out nearly putting 50 points on Japan. Looked like a very hot and humid day out, so definitely slowed up towards the end, but that was refreshing to see. So England then go on to play a 2-match series against New Zealand, and I am really excited for that. I think that'll be a top series. Hopefully, England can get a win against New Zealand, one of them, and I'll probably put money on them to bring home 1 win in that. But that'll be exciting, seeing where New Zealand rugby are at, with new coach and new regime, new captaincy and stuff. And the other international match that happened was Wales against South Africa. Wales are suffering quite heavily with injuries. It's just a shit time to be a Welshman who supports rugby at this moment. There's no way to beat around the bush here. It's pretty horrid looking. But they nearly conceded 50 at Twickenham against South Africa. So yeah, it's not looking good for them when they come down and play Wales in a bye-match series as well. So I think I'm actually going to one of those games at Suncorp, so that'll be fun to watch. But
did you just say Welsh are coming down to play Wales?
Oh, sorry. Australia. That's what I meant to say. I probably did say that. Yeah.
Oh, New South Wales. Yeah, right. Okay, gotcha.
I don't even think they'll beat the New South Wales Waratahs at the moment. So, and they came bottom of the table in Super Rugby. So, but that'll be an interesting series for completely alternate reasons why New Zealand's England should be a good series. It'll be interesting to see how the race to the bottom goes for those teams of the top tier, essentially. But my money's on Australia bringing home the chocolates on that one. I think they'll come home comfortably 2-0 victors in that. So yeah, there's a bit going on, and then there's also some minor tours with Scotland going to I think they're going to USA and playing a 2-match series there, which would be bloody awesome to play in and be a part of that tour if you're a Scottish rugby player, because that would just be fun. And then I forgot to mention, actually, Ireland are doing a 2-match series against South Africa, which is being pumped up in the press with some spicy comments from the South African media, which will also be very interesting to watch. So just putting it to you, Bebbo, me talking about international rugby, do you feel, I wouldn't say left out, but a little bit disappointed there's nothing similar in rugby league? Or, how would you like to see something like this occur in rugby league?
Yeah, 100%. But at the same time, it's not. There's not enough developed countries. There's not enough talent in some of these countries for it to work. The only way it would ever really work is if Australia played New Zealand. Like Australia. Okay, let me start with this. Australia used to play New Zealand on Anzac Day or somewhere around Anzac Day in an Anzac Test. They then played New Zealand directly after the season in a Trans-Tasman Test. That was it. They'd play twice a year. It was good. They would then have back, and I'm talking a fair while ago, they would have every 4 years, they would do a Great Britain Lions tour. So it wouldn't be England, it would be the Great Britain Lions that would form over there. Australia would send a touring team. They would go and play local team, like Super League teams, essentially. They might play Wigan on a Wednesday night. They might play fucking Leeds the next week. They went over and played Russia one time in a midweek game, you know. But then they will play a 3-game series against the British Lions.
Yeah.
Well, so they were good. That was good. Gave you something to watch. And Great Britain, because it's not just England, it's all those. What classifies Great Britain? Wales, Scotland, and what? And that's it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the Irish contingent is included in that, but Britain is basically those 3 nations, and then Great Britain and Ireland. The United Kingdom is Ireland included. So
okay, yeah. So they were pretty strong there for a while. You know, some of those tours didn't end in Aussie's favour, but the way that worked better too for the game in the Northern Hemisphere was people who weren't actually English but played in English Super League like they do these days played for their own country. And they played for Wales, they played for Scotland, and then they played for the Great Britain team if they got picked. Now, because that doesn't exist, they all want to play for England because it's the only fucking chance they have of winning a World Cup, which is already minuscule anyway, as it is.
Yeah.
So if they went back to the Great Britain Lions, they could probably create their own international system over there, like the Six Nations in Union. 6 nations, 5 nations, 6.
Yeah, 6 nations. Sorry,
6 nations in Union. They could probably do that with Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England, France. You know?
Yeah.
And that might be something for the international calendar, whether they do that every year or they do that every other year. Who fucking knows? But you would never do any of this stuff on a World Cup year. And see, they used to have a 4 nations. Now, until the emergence of Tonga, which are now the emergence of Samoa, there was only 3 nations with any chance of ever winning that tournament. And if I'm being honest, there's really only 2 nations, and that's Australia and New Zealand. But England had a shot on their day. So you had this 4 nations every year in between World Cup years, but they're the only 3. They're 3 of the 4 teams that are making the semi-finals of every World Cup. So you're essentially having a World Cup every year. There's a waste of time. So, yes, I am a bit jealous that they have certain things in the rugby league calendar there, but like I said, it's got to be against teams that aren't just going to flog the piss out against other teams. I don't want to see Australia play Fiji in an off-season and just win 72-0 because you'll see guys playing for Australia like Luke Brooks because everyone else is getting surgery and they're like, oh, well, we're just playing Fiji, so we're probably going to win that fucking game easy. And it cheapens the jersey. So if Australia played New Zealand every year, twice a year, 100% they should. England, up that way, they should have some sort of series between over there. And I would then, if they don't want to revive the British Lions tour to make the World Cup interesting, I would allow them to enter the British Lions into the World Cup. Or maybe every second year. The World Cup's every second year. So the odd 2 years, they do a tri-series, Australia, New Zealand, and Great Britain.
Yeah.
And
it'd be good to have like a qualifier as well, the year in between. So
and they
a team from outside of that 3 has to qualify into the 4.
Well, that's what they used to do with the 4 nations, but that 4th team never had a fucking chance, ever. Yeah, I get that, but they never had a chance. You know, you can have Samoa play Tonga every year, 2-game series. You can have PNG play Fiji, 2-game series. Whoever, just match them up. Yes, it is the same teams playing the same teams, but until they get better, why do you want to see a team go out there and get fucking hammered?
It's a bit of a problem, though. Like, you look at early days in the Six Nations, England were just dominant, right? And now they're not. And that's just because... And it's like New South Wales early days of Origin. They were dominant. Now they're not. You know, it takes time.
No, they weren't. No, that's spoken like a true Englishman, mate. New South Wales took 4 years, I think, to win their first Origin series.
Yeah, but then they had like a...
No, they did not. They literally had two little red hot periods, two to 3 year periods over a 10-year span. But they...
I know Queensland are overall winners, but okay. Maybe it's not been like absolute dominance, right? But they were definitely stronger in the early years of it.
In the late 90s, early 2000s for a bit.
But okay, so my point is it's not going to happen overnight. These teams aren't going to get better overnight. The only issue I have is I think the NRL as an organisation has too much power to want to let these things happen. They have got a good wicket where they currently are. Why would they bother then trying to share revenue with other areas? And it's kind of the situation that rugby has found itself in, is now the international game is the only thing that generates like decent profit. So they don't want to share that profit. They want to keep it in-house. And it's why they run Origin. So, you know, people do have that sort of representative feeling in a series. How would you feel about sort of keeping Queensland and New South Wales as international states for a bit, even though they're not? How would that work at all, do you think? So you'd have 4 nations. You could have Queensland, New South Wales, England, and New Zealand, for example. Do you hate it?
I don't hate it, but... I think it takes the uniqueness.
It does.
The unique,
I'd like to see it because I'd just be
Origin.
Interested, like as an experiment, to see how it went.
Well, they did it in Super League. Okay, the year that Super League was in, they went a tri-series. They went a New Zealand team, Queensland, and New South Wales in a tri-series. They played each other once, and then the top 2 played off the final. It was still Queensland versus New South Wales. But mind you.
Wow.
But mind you, because Super League and ARL were running, you know, side by side at the time, there could have been some really good New Zealand players playing ARL, which weren't eligible for their Super League team. And same can be said for New South Wales, same said for Queensland. But honestly, 98% of the Queensland team were the Broncos and they were in Super League. So,
so this is the interesting thing as well. We talked about this previously. And... if you did have Queensland, New South Wales, it'd be interesting to see where Brian To'o plays for. Jerome Luai, who he plays for.
Samoa.
So then it would weaken the Origin teams a little bit.
Not really. There's someone else to do their job.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, you know, Australia's C team would do well in the World Cup. So, okay. Ultimately, I'd like to see it happen. It's not going to happen overnight, though. It's going to take time and investment. And
there needs to be more leagues.
Hey.
I said there needs to be more leagues across the globe. Yeah, and we've talked about this in previous episodes too. So you said they're comparing to union, but Japan's got a decent union competition. England's got their own union competition. France got their own union competition. South Africa, well, they've got their own, and like you mentioned, they all play together. Italy, England, whatever, Ireland. There's all these competitions running, you know, not consecutively, what's the word? Parallel, yeah, I guess that'll do. I've used it already, but now I'm doing double up on words. Okay. Running at the same time as each other all over the globe. League, it's Super League or it's NRL. Yeah. That's it. There's no... yes, there's competitions running in PNG, and yes, there's competitions running, but there's competitions running in Gladstone. There's competitions running in Townsville. That doesn't mean they're professionals. That doesn't mean that they're good enough to compete with these guys in those top competitions. So until there's proper professional competitions in multiple different countries, talking about a whole international schedule where they go and they play America or they play whatnot, it's nothing more than, you know, a fucking novelty. That's it. It's an exhibition game because it's not a competition.
Yeah. I think there's, and we can both agree that it's never going to happen in AFL. So,
well, it can't happen, can it? You know, you got to play more than one country for them to have national teams.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how difficult it would be to split up AFL for any sort of origin or representative fixture, and
that's where they should go. That's the best thing they can hope for is doing that.
Yeah, I just think, like I said, I don't think the NRL will want to share profits. They're happy with their slice of pie. They'll just follow the NFL model and try and keep the money, the gravy train rolling.
Well, that's another thing. Like, how long's the season already? How many games do you want out of them? Fucking hell. Poor blokes need to rest their shoulders every now and then. So
that is the issue with union. You know, you have 15 men teams plus 8 on the bench, 23. That's a big squad. And, you know, you're probably looking at a 40 bloke squad for these top pro teams. And, you know, with injuries, you probably have to make it 45. That's a lot of salaries to pay, ultimately. And that's why it struggles, I think, because trying to maintain all those players, and it's a lot of money that's required to run these teams.
And how long do their actual other comps go for? Like the domestic comps, for example. Like, how long does Super Rugby go for? 12 weeks?
Yeah, well, that is a very short competition. That is definitely the shortest. So the top 14 in France, that goes from sort of like August to July. Like, it's almost non-stop. They're not even at the... I think they've just started the final series, and it's like a 4-match series. And then they potentially play international fixtures, like France will, but they don't actually now because the season runs for too long, so they eat that international window. So what they've done is... they sort of follow the English or soccer frameworks where every team has to play each other team twice. There's 14 teams, and also they play the European competition, which takes out sort of 10 weekends of the year. And because it's rugby, you can't play midweek matches. You have to have minimum 6-day stand down between matches, which then prolongs the season. What the NRL do, and I think what English rugby should have done when they expanded the league, which was probably the right call, they should not have increased the number of matches. They should have kept the number of matches the same. You play your local rivals, whoever they might be, every season, and then you play almost like you have the framework in the NFL where you play like a random state. So you might not play them for 4 years, but then it becomes a bit of a thing. It's like, we're going up to Newcastle the first time in 4 years. Let's make a trip of it. It makes it a bit more exciting. You know what I mean? So, you're right. The length of the season is an issue. You'd have to lose games probably in the NRL, and that's never going to happen. So, and like you said, players will just prioritise playing for the club, make more money doing that. Why would I injure myself playing for my country? I might as well get fixed up. So it lessens that whole thing. But then the lesser nations probably would be like, fuck yeah, I want to play for my nation. Like, it's, pride thing. So, yeah, I'm not that they're going to win, but, it probably lessens their value as a player to the NRL. So then their salary goes down, so it sort of comes back around and says, okay, well, now I'm not going to play for my nation because I will get lesser salary, and a bit of pride doesn't really equate to any sort of cash. So why would I bother?
I would actually rather see, and after watching the under-19 State of Origin last week, some good athletes in there. It was a high-quality game. I would actually rather see, if they're going to expand the international calendar in the off-season, I'd like to see them field under-19s. They could even go to 21s, but players who haven't debuted in the top league, so you can't take players at NRL, you can't do that. Let the developing players at a certain age go out and play their internationals, because that's a lot more interesting to me than watching, the Hammer score a fucking 7-try haul against fucking Kenya because they want to have a crack against Australia one year.
Yeah. No, that would be good. I also want to peel back a little bit, and probably last point we'll make before we go on to the multi is British and Irish Lions is a rugby union team. Sounds very similar to the Great British Lions that came down to Australia.
Suspiciously close, even.
Yeah, it's almost like it was planned, right? I don't know why they're called the Lions. There's no lions in Europe, let alone Britain. But so they're coming down to Australia next year. and that generates a shit ton of money for Australian rugby. So as we went through in one of our previous episodes, I went through all the financials of the ARU, and they basically had a war chest generated from the 2015 British Lions tour, which just ran out. So that is something I would like to see kicked up again in league, and it's just a shame that it sort of dissolved because. Yeah, you play club teams. You could play Penrith midweek and then play Australia at the weekend, and that's kind of how the British and Irish Lions roll. They have two teams, a midweek team and a weekend team, and it's just rugby union bonanza for that month when there's no club competitions. And guess what? Every single player wants to play for it because you get a shit ton of money when you play for the Lions, and it's more valuable than a contract.
Yeah, well, that's similar to what the Great Britain's Lions tour was that I mentioned in league. They would play, like I said, Leeds or someone midweek, and then they'd play Great Britain on the weekend.
Yeah, and that's what I'd like to see come back up again. And but I think we've chewed the fat a fair bit on that, mate. So shall we head over to our financial advice multi-section?
All right. Well, let's start with how we did last week, and the answer's not great. I've just got to go back through all my failed multis for the week to find in.
How many were it?
No, we had Gold Coast Titans 1-12, and they spanked the living piss out of a very pathetic Warriors team. We had the Sydney Roosters 1-12, who beat Canterbury by a tad more than 12. South Sydney Rabbitohs 1-12 against the Eagles, who won by 14. And the Canberra Raiders to beat the -4.5 start against the Tigers, only to get their ass whooped as the Tigers become premiership favourites after 2 quick wins.
Well, as a tipping comp, guys, anyone listening to that would have done well if it's just picking the winner, apart from the Tigers, which if
apart from the Tigers.
But who would have tipped that? Maybe one bloke out of
not a lot of people tip the Titans though. I tip the Titans, but most people tip the Warriors.
No, that's good.
But who tipped the Tigers? I thought they were going to get pants, to be honest. Yeah. All right, this week I have gone. There's a little bit of soccer, a little bit of Euros in this one. I've gone Belgium head-to-head against Ukraine on Thursday, Portugal head-to-head against Georgia on Thursday, and Joe Pyfer in the UFC on Sunday to beat Marc-Andre Barriault.
Just to clarify, mate, because that does sound quite a lot like Joe Biden. You're not going for Joe Biden in the presidential...
Joe Pyfer. P-Y-F-E-R, Joe Pyfer. Not Joe Biden in the presidential election. I'm pretty sure America will vote in a criminal in that one. Who have you got, Millsy, this week?
Yeah, I'm Euros, but also Copa America. So I'm going Italy against Switzerland in the first official knockout game in the Euros, and then I'm going for Brazil against Paraguay in the Copa America, and that brings my total to $3.12. So
mine was like $3.06. I can't remember. It was scraped over too. And Chris's proxy, he's gone a 2-legger. He's gone Parramatta Eels head-to-head against Newcastle Knights. Bottom of the table, Parramatta Eels, I might remind everybody that's a long-suffering Eels fan. And Michael Page to beat Ian Gary at UFC 303 on Sunday, which should be quite the striking encounter for those enthusiasts of the sport. All right, all that together, power played was about 48-78-1.
That's pretty good. Someone's put some good odds in that.
Juicy.
I mean, it's good time to be alive as a sports fan at the moment, isn't it? We were just saying before this, it would have been good to do some long-term predictions in Euros and Cricket World Cup, but you got that. You got NRL and AFL. You got Origin tomorrow night, or probably today as you're listening to this, listeners. So we try to stay away from that on purpose because no doubt we'd have fucked you mouldy by the time you listen to this if you had applied it. So, Any last minute unofficial predictions for Origin? I've got to ask you.
Chris and I already did Origin last week. No, you took the week off. How about we ask your prediction?
Okay, I'm going for a Queensland win, and purely because I think the pressure is on Madge Maguire and the comments that he made last week, trying to put the pressure on Billy Slater with his whole sort of throwing rocks in glass houses statement. I think he has basically just written Queensland's pre-match talk, and I think if there was anyone else at the helm other than Billy Slater, I would not be tipping them. But I think Queensland will get that monkey off their back for being notoriously poor travellers away from Queensland and New South Wales. So I think they'll get the job done. Don't really agree with some of the selections like Capewell. I'm a bit surprised to see him. I would love to see Fafita in there again, but don't question the Slate dog. He knows what he's doing, I reckon.
Slate dog. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it's just a nickname I have with him. So, yeah.
And just to clarify, when Millsy said get the monkey off their back, talking about Ezra, man.
So, yeah.
All right. I hope Chris gets better. Hot tour.
Well, the skin's almost worn off it. So that's us for this episode. Please follow us on our socials. Search for Masturbated Sports on Facebook and Instagram.
Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever it is that you get your podcasts.
And most importantly, join us again next episode for some more engaging discussions,
Diverse perspectives,
and to experience the friction of masturbated sports.
And when you're gone,